Welcome to the last official episode of the Purkey Horror Picture Show. And this is the last movie that's mentioned in Science Fiction Double Feature, and that is When Worlds Collide. But before we get into that movie, I just want to mention I think I'm going to do a couple of these a month, an ongoing series called Purkey Horror Picture Show. And what I was thinking I'll make it is movies that were made before 1975 when the Rocky Horror Picture Show was released. So, movies that might have been mentioned in the theme song is what I would like to have in this ongoing series. So, I've certainly got some that I will already have in the back burner to do, but if you can think of some movies, now they're going to mostly be B-movies, horror movies, sci-fi movies, exploitation movies, just weird underground kind of movies from that 75 and earlier era, then shoot me a message if there's one you'd like me to do. Especially if it's one I've never seen, it'd be even better. But of course some of these will be the ones I'm revisiting in my life that I haven't seen probably for 30 or 40 years. So it'll still be like seeing them again for new. I am tentatively thinking about doing X, the Man with the X-Ray Eyes, next, but I will be open for suggestions. Okay, now on to When Worlds Collide from 1951.
But when worlds collide, said George Powell to his bride, I'm gonna give you some terrible thrill.
All right, When Worlds Collide, 1951, directed by Rudolph Mattei. I do not know much about him. I kind of looked up his filmography. I didn't see a lot that really struck out to me. If you notice in the song, it mentions George Powell in connection with When Worlds Collide. Now, George Powell, for people who are into older sci-fi, is a very famous name. George Powell produced a lot of things, and this is one of them. He also produced, famously, War of the Worlds, along with a whole bunch of other stuff. But he is kind of known as a kind of really influential producer of 50s, especially 50s sci-fi, maybe early 60s too. This movie also has Barbara Rush, which we saw in It Came from Outer Space. She's an amazing sci-fi heroine, so I love seeing her in these movies. And she plays Joyce, and Richard Dare, or Durr, I don't know how to say his name, and he plays David. He is a pilot, kind of a womanizer, hedonist kind of guy, and she is, once again, the daughter. There's a lot of these, you'll notice they're the daughter of a scientist thing, but she's a daughter of the scientist in this, but she also is somewhat of a scientist in her own right. Once again, it kind of seems to be a pattern in a lot of these movies, whether they're the daughter of the scientist, but sometimes they're scientists themselves, which is kind of cool. So the basic concept of this movie is, and it starts out with a biblical verse, and it starts out, when worlds collide, and flames behind it. This is a very kind of a Noah's Ark for the space age. And the basic concept has been redone many times, very successfully. Obvious ones from fairly recent memory would be, you've got Armageddon and Deep Impact, which are both about world-ending events and how man is going to deal with them. This one is basically, there is a planet coming very close to the Earth named Zyra, and then there is a rogue sun that this planet is rotating around, and the rogue sun is Bella, and the sun is going to smash into the Earth, and they've got it figured out when it's going to happen. So it's pretty great. The story starts with the the Playboy pilot, and he has to fly the suitcase that's handcuffed to his hand. He has to fly it to a scientist, confirming that this is going to happen. Eventually, it gets released to the world. There's so many days, and they've got it down to the hour. There's so many days it's going to happen, and it's pretty great. Later in the movie, you've got these calendars, the rip-off calendars with the date. And there's dual calendars. One of them is for when Zyra is going to come past the Earth, and that's going to cause massive flooding and disasters and everything. And then a few days later, when Bella hits the Earth, and that's how many days they have. I think in the movie when it starts, it says they have about 8 months. They're essentially going to build these Ark spaceships. Only so many people can make it on there, and they're going to pick the scientists and everything that'll get on there. And really, that's kind of the core of the movie, is how they're preparing for it, how they're going to pick who gets on it, the drama of whether people get on there that really deserve to be on there, and then, of course, like Noah's Ark, the people that don't get on, are they going to rebel, and are they going to cause trouble? What's going to happen? And there's floods, and there's fires, and there's earthquakes, and there's all kinds of stuff. It's not really as good as a lot of the other ones that I've seen in the series, so I'm not going to go into a ton of detail. Probably the best parts of it are some of the science is pretty good for its era. I mean, they talk about things like when they take off, they're going to black out for a while, which is kind of a thing. How they're going to have to conserve fuel. Oh, their concept is they're going to leave the Earth and they're going to go fly to Zyra, the other planet that come past, and it's supposed to be very similar to Earth. They might be able to survive on it. That's their only chance of survival, is that when the planet comes by, shortly after they're going to fly up, land on that planet, and then the Earth will get destroyed behind them and they'll survive. But there's only enough time to make a few ships that can only hold a few people. Everyone else is going to die. So the best parts are some of the science, like I said. They also talk about how they have to conserve the fuel and then use it at the last minute to slow their descent onto the planet. So once again, pretty accurate for that era. Like, that's not too far off what kind of things you got to do to get on the moon or to go fly in space. Of course, the actual ships they show are pretty unrealistic, and they're just strapped in these kind of metal chairs. They don't have spacesuits. It's pretty great too. The rocket they make is basically on a big giant kind of a slide, like it's on tracks, and it's on a slide that'll go downwards and then curve up the side of a mountain. And then when they start curving up the side of the mountain, they'll shoot off the rockets and they'll go into space. It's supposed to sling them or give them more power or speed or something. I mean, it's kind of ludicrous now, but it looks cool for those era, and a lot of neat model work. And that would be the biggest other thing in this. The disaster work, the model work they show is really a lot of fun for that era. You expect to see models, and they have some really great backdrop paintings. There's one of New York flooded after Zyra goes by. That's pretty great. And there's another one which is kind of the planet itself when they get to Zyra, and the painting of that planet is pretty neat as well. Very classic kind of 50s sci-fi look to it, colorful and interesting. This is a color movie, Technicolor. So it was a relatively big budget. It doesn't hold up to some of the other greats of that era that we've talked about, like Forbidden Planet and War of the Worlds. Both would be kind of your essential 50s sci-fi. If you want to go back and watch some 50s sci-fi, those would be a couple really great ones. There's a few others too that are a little bit lower budget that are pretty good too, but those are a couple that you would definitely want to check out. So overall, I'd give it 3.5 out of 5 stars. Entertaining enough if you want to kind of go back and check it out, but there are others on this list that I would go check out first. So once again, probably in a week or so, we'll have another one of these. I am tentatively thinking I will do the Man with the X-Ray Eyes, starring Ray Milland. It's a Roger Corman movie, if I remember correctly, but we would find out when we do it. But if you have another suggestion or two, I would love to hear them. And even if I don't do it next time, I might do it after that. Once again, a lot of fun to go revisit or to see some of these for the first time. We will talk to you soon.
To the late night double feature picture.